Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Mitchell Sentinel podcast. It's kind of been a thunderous couple days, more ways than one here in Wheeler County and throughout America. But anyways, we're going to talk about John Day and Joaquin Miller. I don't know exactly how those two are connected other than probably separated by 30 years or so of their entrance into the country. But what do you got, Dad? Which one you going with first?
I think we're going to go with Cincinnati Miller. You could understand him changing his name to Joaquin.
Yeah, that's a strange Greek take on, or maybe a Latin take on a name.
Yeah, and then he went to Hispanic name. He went to Joaquin after the bandito Joaquin Murrieta.
Oh, okay. That's where he got his nom de plume.
Yeah, that's whatever that is.
That means pen name.
Okay. Well, that's what he used. He was born in September 8th, 1837 in Liberty, Indiana.
That's near Union County, it looks like.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, okay. According to Wikipedia.
Oh, okay, that's cool. You know, and he got his first education not only in school, but his father was a Quaker schoolmaster. So he was probably educated in the English language pretty well and pretty quick in his life. But they decided that they moved to Oregon in 1852. And after a few years here, Miller, he decided he wanted to hit the gold fever. So he headed for California.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how old was he in 52 if he was born in 37?
About 30. He was about 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, I guess he would be.
He wasn't very old. But anyhow, he went down there, and the first thing he did is he kind of hung out with the Indians. I don't know why. The Modocs mainly. And
he lived with them for like a year, wasn't it?
Yeah, or longer. I don't know. Anyhow, he married, however Modocs marry. He married a Modoc princess, which is probably the daughter of the chief, and her name was Callie Shasta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
I thought Callie Shasta was his daughter's name.
No.
Okay, sorry.
I think. I could. Yeah. Now you got me doubting me.
Sorry, I'm just going off of. I didn't see. I know I'd read it somewhere earlier today, and I was just curious. But he wrote a paper about it, Life Amongst the Modocs.
Oh yes, and I think that's where he started writing a lot of his stuff. But I remember seeing some writing in Old Shasta once down there in the museum. It was actually a warrant for his arrest for stealing a horse when he moved back to Oregon.
Oh. Well, I mean, that's how he got back to Oregon, was on a stolen horse.
A stolen horse, and he moved to Port Orford by then, and there was a lady down there by the name of her. I don't know her given name. I think was maybe Teresa Dyer, but I think she went by Minnie Myrtle Dyer, and she was quite a poet in her own life, right? And she wrote quite a bit of poetry, and she was pretty much famous enough to get the attention of Joaquin Miller. So he made a brag. He said he got into Port Orford on Thursday and they got married on Sunday. So that was a pretty whirlwind courtship, I think.
My goodness.
Yeah. So then the marriage lasted about 8 years and produced 3 children, and later they were divorced. But I think before they were divorced, I think he got itchy feet again and decided, hey, I want to do something different in my life. This is enough tying me down. He's kind of one of them kind of guys, I think, that had to just keep moving and keep doing different things. So, in between the time, though, he went to school in, I think that's the Columbia, University of Columbia of Eugene City, which is,
And that was the predecessor of the University of Oregon.
Right. Yeah, and he got his law degree there in about 1861.
I didn't realize he was a lawyer.
Yeah, well, back in them days, it might mean something. Hard. It just didn't mean that much. You got to be able to read and write mainly. But again, he the lure of gold. I don't think it was the lure of gold so much, but the action that was around the finding of the gold and everything was what he craved, and so he headed to Canyon City.
It didn't seem like he was ever a gold miner per se.
I don't think he was into work.
Probably
I just by reading what I read about him, I think he perceived it was labor just wasn't in his repertoire.
Well, he probably liked the wild times that surrounded these little boom cities, boom towns.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's craving
the adventure and something to write about.
Yeah,
Instant inspiration.
Yeah, and gambling. But anyhow, he got up to Grant County and became the actually third county judge.
So he did use his law degree.
Yeah. So I back in the day, I don't know, county judgment. I don't think it maybe needed his law degree. He just needed to be a politician. So I think that's
kind of like how they define a judge here.
Yeah, here to now and today
in the counties.
Yeah, he.
You okay over there?
No, I have to get a Kleenex. My nose is running.
I'm going to pause this real quick. No.
The pine pollen is in the air, and if you don't believe me, look at the rain yesterday after it settled a little bit.
I was in Bend yesterday, and there was tons of the pollen in the puddles.
Oh yes, the yellow.
After the
stuff.
Big storm came through.
Well, he actually did try to use his law degree a little bit later on. He filed for or whatever and expressed he wanted to be on the Oregon Supreme Court. Well, he didn't get that job, and so that kind of discouraged him from his law.
Did they say why he didn't get the job? What was there was some sort of controversy about?
I don't know. I didn't read about why he didn't get the job, other than he was just turned down. Maybe that was a polite way of saying he wasn't going to be a very good one to begin with. I don't know, but anyhow, he moved to England, and in 1870 they published the Songs of Sierra, which was a very successful book of poetry in England, anyway. And in the meantime, Minnie Myrtle Dyer Miller, to make ends meet, she went on the lecture circuit and everything, and her lecture and her subject material was telling what a scallywag Joaquin Miller was. So and she also got the endorsement of the feminists of the day, which was Dunaway and Victor, and so they supported her quite a bit, but left her pretty destitute when he left her. I don't know why. He probably took the money and everything else, which hence the scallywag. But anyhow, later in life, they did meet again, and I think she was hitting him up for money because at that time she was really down on her luck and her health was going, and she was right up against it. And shortly thereafter, she passed away. But Joaquin Miller, I remember years ago up in Canyon City, was that outside of Canyon City, up towards Canyon Mountain a little further. They had a place. It was kind of a little semi-resort thing. They had a swimming pool, and they had horseback riding, and they had picnic areas and a few other things up there, and they called it Joaquin Miller's. So I remember going up there in grade school to the school picnics were usually held up there. And you could get together and have your picnic and whatever, and then you could go swimming in the pool. At that time, it was one of the few pools that was probably around.
Yeah. Even today, I don't think there's too many.
No, but they do have one. They do have one in John Day now. But back in the day, you had I think they had one at Mount Vernon Hot Springs, and maybe Ritter, Lehman, and I really don't know if the spring at Joaquin Miller's was heated by geothermal or just a pool. But I'm thinking it must have been some sort of a warm deal, because
they wouldn't have built it if there wasn't.
Yeah, right.
You wouldn't think, right?
But anyhow, Joaquin Miller, he walked through this country, and he left his mark on quite a few things. He has they actually have his cabin in
Canyon City.
Yeah, they moved it down to the museum there in Canyon City. And they have some more stuff of his up there, I guess. But I happened to be in Lincoln City about 15 years ago. And I usually don't go to the antique bookstores, but I did this time for some reason. Like maybe the good Lord might have led me back there anyhow. But I walk in there and I find this book, and it says it's pretty ratty shape and everything, and it says True Bear Stories by Joaquin Miller. So I open this book up, and it says it's copyrighted in 1900.
Nice.
And I thought,
What was that, the first edition?
I didn't say whether it was the first edition or what, but it just said copyright by Rand McNally in 1900. So, I had never read anywhere that he had written a story about bear stories or any of this stuff, or a book, and I thought that was quite ironic. But he takes to writing these bear tales, and I'm sure over the years that he'd traveled around, he probably kept a little notebook on bear stories and heard all these stories from some people, and
Probably just
maybe
compiled it.
yeah, and he just compiled it over the years, and then he I don't know if it wasn't published or copyrighted in England, so it was here in the United States. But
Yeah, it was
it's
after he got back.
interesting little book, and back in the day they wrote a little different back in the early 1900s than they do today.
Well, yeah, the language was different in a way.
Yeah, completely. So it was kind of a unique find for me. I don't have any of his poetry or any of his poetry books, but
So that's just stories. There's no poems.
No poems, just stories. Yeah. So consequently, that probably wraps up Joaquin Miller.
Well, no, I got a little bit.
Have you got a little more?
Well, not much, but when I was in Oakland, it's been about 5-6 years ago.
This Oakland, Oregon, or
Oakland, California.
Yeah.
Because he lived there quite a while, and I think later in life he was there. And there's this pub called Hindemans, or Holdemans. Let me get the pronunciation right. Heinold's First and Last Chance Saloon, and it's pretty interesting little pub because it was built from the leavings of a whaling ship, and the ship carpenter built it with this Heinold, and Joaquin Miller used to frequent it quite a bit, as well as Jack London, and they were contemporaries in the same area at the same time.
Oh.
And they're up on this ridge, kind of a couple miles from, because this is right on the bay, a couple miles from there was a place where Joaquin Miller lived too. And so he would walk to town every day and go to this pub and or saloon and have drinks and hang out with Jack London, and he'd walk home at night. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And another thing interesting about Heinold's First and Last Chance Saloon is that it was during the 1904 earthquake, I believe, or maybe it was 1884. I can't remember which year it was when I was in there, but the earthquake took and shifted the building. And so the bar sits at like a 30-degree angle. And so you sit, the whole room is tilted. They never fixed it.
You think you're drunk when you walk in there, huh?
Yeah. When you walk out, you realize you weren't as
drunk as you thought you were. Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting, growing up with like the name Joaquin Miller from around here, and then going down there and finding out that he had he spent time down there. And I'm not sure what part of his life it was. I didn't research it that much, but interesting nonetheless.
Well, it seems ironic though. Everywhere he went, he was remembered.
Yeah.
So
he probably thrived on a lot of that attention that he would get.
Well, I think too.
It made his life a little bit more adventurous. Give him something to write about.
Yeah.
And he probably was a scallywag.
And I think he was a pretty good bull shipper too. Probably about that time. It had nothing to do with cattle.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I imagine 100%.
Yeah.
But most writers not all, but
he could probably
some
go down
writers.
there and panhandle drinks all day and probably never have to pay for them.
Yeah, he probably could.
Yeah.
Just for the conversation.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so John Day, is that you got something prepared on?
Yeah.
on the early explorer of this area.
The things that he had left his mark here and so many things, not only in this area but also in some places in Idaho. There's a river named for him out there, and then this John Day River, and then down in Clatsop County, there's another river named for him there, and everything, you know. But he was born in Virginia in about 1771, and he was a member of the Astor Hunt Overland Party, and they, along with Ramsey Cooks, who were lifelong friends, I think, or if not, they were sure to be later on. They were with Ramsey Cooks in the winter of 1811, and they were up in the Snake River country as they coming down to Astoria.
So that was his time of exploration in the West, was 1811-ish?
Yeah, they said that, you know, he could have been here in 1805. A lot of this stuff was not even documented, you know.
So he came after, I mean, obviously he'd come after Lewis and Clark, but
yeah,
as little as just a year after.
Well, no,
Well, they did 1804
to
so 1806, I think, when they
were out
returned.
here, you know, and the Lewis and Clark and this Astor Hunt Overland Party in Astoria, it was actually a kind of a land grab between the United States and England.
Yeah, they're racing out here
to
make a claim.
establish something so they could claim the land. French were here also, as were the Spanish, but they were in this party, and they got what they call mountain fever, and so they just couldn't go on. So they took them, and they built a little hut. The Indians built a little hut for them, and they put them in this hut. And these Indians were supposed to take care of them, and after a while, they'd run out of food, and they didn't have nothing to eat. So they decided, hey, man, the Indians, they split, and they left poor old Cooks and Day there in this deal, and so they were in pretty weak in condition. So one day, Cooks happened to look out the doorway, which wasn't probably a doorway, but the outlet into this little cabin thing, and he seen this gray wolf, and this gray wolf was kind of staking out his lunch.
Oh, yeah.
So what he did, he just shot the old wolf, and he brought him in, and then he Cooks wasn't as bad off as Day was, I guess. So, and they took, and I for some reason, I don't know why they didn't eat the meat, or if they did, anyhow, they cut the meat off, and they broke the bones and got the marrow out of the bones and made a soup out of it.
Well, that's probably the most nutritious, dense part of the wolf, as far maybe other than the organs.
Yeah, the stringy meat, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Indians like the dog meat. So
well, and I've heard that they, like that cougar actually tastes really, really good.
Well, I'm never going to find out unless I'm starving, I think. Anyhow, they got better, and they got feeling a little better and everything. So they started off on their own, trying to catch up and everything. And they run on some other Indians, and they kind of took care of them and fed them a little better and got them going a little bit. Well, they get to the mouth of what they call the La Page River. This is named from French, I think.
Yeah.
Anyhow, they come across some other Indians that weren't so nice, and they robbed them.
Okay.
And they took everything. They did leave them the skin they were born with, and that was it. And
where is this Page River?
It was the mouth of what was to become the John Day River.
Oh, okay. So at the mouth down by the Columbia.
Yeah, right there where it runs into the Columbia, I guess.
Okay, so the French had already been here and named the John Day?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, the French, well, the Deschutes.
Yeah.
It's French. There's a lot of French names through here, and that for that reason.
And that was basically the Hudson Bay Company coming out and trapping beaver with all the mountain men and stuff during that era.
And they named a lot of this stuff, and just as soon as they left or lost their foothold, here come the English and the rest of the people that wanted to put a mark on this thing, and the Americans, and so they renamed a lot of this stuff, which might have been hence the reason that John Day River was named after John Day. America wanted to put their mark on it and take the French one off. I don't know. Evidently, that nobody stopped at the mouth of the Deschutes.
Well, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what would be different about going up the Deschutes as it would the John Day. I don't know. There might have been more of an established route into this country, because I know that
the John Day goes farther.
Yeah. and that this area was a pretty predominant hunting area for like 3 or 4 different Native American tribes over thousands of years.
Yeah, but they had to follow the river to get here because they actually got their subsistence out of the river
As they went.
Yeah, and they got up here in this land in the wintertime. Nobody came up here because it was so harsh. Even a lot of when they established all the forts like Fort Watson or Camp Watson, Camp Logan, Camp Lincoln, that whole series of forts, they tried to keep people here in the wintertime and they couldn't do it. And a lot of the soldiers, they stayed, but a lot of them died because of scurvy. They couldn't get
enough.
They couldn't get enough vegetables and vitamins and stuff here in the wintertime to survive. They
Survive.
Meat you could find meat.
That's
there.
pretty easy to get.
Yeah, but you couldn't get any of the other stuff.
Well, and I know the Indians didn't stay here permanently. There was a permanent dwelling for the Paiute, I believe, in John Day, the town John Day, and then another one, Tenino, I believe,
That'd be over on the Warm Spring side.
Yeah, which would be down on the lower part of the John Day River. And those were the only 2 permanent locations kind of in this vicinity as far as I could tell.
Well, yeah, back in that day, but before that, there was Fort Rock area. There was a bunch of Indians out in that area.
Yeah, but that was just, I mean, I'm just talking about regionally here. Those were, there was like a huge, like prehistoric lake there at that time.
Yeah.
When they found like the sagebrush sandals in the cave there. That was like, I think they were like 10,000 years ago or something.
Yeah.
I need to check on my archaeology on that one.
One of Gail Onko's books I read, I don't know what it was. I think it must have been the last one, maybe the 5th or 4th. Anyhow, he had actually staged cooks and Day and I think one other guy in the Slide Mountain country.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought would be off the route quite a ways, but he said that they were a bunch of Indians came upon them and they thought they were in trouble with the Indians again, and they knew that where they were at was an Indian burial ground in a holy land, and that they didn't so they act like they were ghosts and crazy people and spirits, and
They
so
didn't mess with them.
they didn't mess with them. The Indians got out of there in a heartbeat.
Well,
so,
and that kind of makes sense because there was a lot of activity up there, Indian Prairie, probably Big Summit Prairie too,
yeah,
up in the Ochicos.
yeah,
And
but-
that's another interesting thing about the ghosts. I guess when the Europeans first started traveling up the Columbia, the Indians would always notice them as ghosts with beards. They were like, these people are. I mean, we don't see anything that white with
they-
facial hair.
hair,
These
yeah.
are ghosts with beards.
Yeah. Well, the Indians used to come out this probably about the same time. Maybe they used to come from clear from the Midwest to the Summit Prairie. The Coast Indians would come up, and they had this big Choctaw party thing up at Big Summit Prairie.
Like an annual powwow.
Powwow, and they would trade. And that's how a lot of you find a lot of artifacts in this area that's not supposed to be here because they were brought out and traded by the Indians to these Indians, and vice versa back there and around. And so,
Well, and also didn't hurt that on the Columbia, the Celilo Falls, that was like another trade hub as well.
yeah, with all the fish and everything, yeah,
Mhm.
they were. I think Lewis and Clark, they got sick and tired of eating fish. They were just about fished out.
I would imagine.
Yeah. The time they got down to the end of Astoria and then back up again, I think they was looking forward to it when they came back up and had to start eating fish again.
I bet that fish tastes a heck of a
Yeah.
lot better than rawhide that you had.
Yeah, probably.
Your moccasins, I've heard stories of the early
Yeah.
explorers having to eat their shoes.
But I want to start on the big mystery of me. For me, is John Day, and all these places were named after him. Like I said, we had 3 rivers, a city, Dayville, another city, a national monument, and a dam later on, and all these things. Now, Ramsey Cook has got to be rolling over in his grave, said, why didn't they name anything after me? Nothing. I don't get a river. I don't get nothing, and I think...
Was he more charismatic?
I don't think so. I think he was weaker probably than Ramsey Cook's, and he really didn't contribute much other than I heard he was a great shot and a hunter. He usually made head hunter of all these things, but I think it has to do with his name.
Okay, that makes sense. John Day. It's got a good ring to it.
Yeah,
It's dark.
and it's simple.
2 syllables.
Yeah, and simple. I mean,
Explains-
could you imagine? Well, I'm going down to Ramsey Cook's River.
Yeah, Ramsey Cook. Yeah.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
Ramsey Cook.
Yeah. And then could you imagine living in Ramsey Cook City?
Well, you could have a place called Ramsey
Well, yeah, I guess
or
you could do
the
that.
Cook River,
Yeah.
but John Day.
John Day. Yeah.
It's-
It's always been just a mystery to me because this man didn't really, other than he was with a bunch of other explorers and did about the same thing, he never did really set himself apart from doing anything other than he had the name that kind of rhymes. And me being a poet and everything, I appreciate something like
like
John Day. It flows like the river.
Yeah, it's a lot smoother than anything, and
Yeah.
it's a full name.
Right. Yeah. And, he was through here and a couple times, 3 times, maybe 4 times in his lifetime. And all this stuff is named after him. But that's good. It's good. I'm comfortable with John Day.
Okay, well, I wouldn't change it to Ramsey
No,
Cook.
I mean, I wouldn't even change it to Dan Cannon.
No.
And it flows pretty well. And sometimes it flows way too well.
Too many syllables.
Yeah, too many.
syllables.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about anything else that's popping up other than we covered John Day and Joaquin Miller.
Well, and we'll circle back to a lot of the stuff that we've talked about because we're exploring this stuff as we go, and as we learn about the stuff and bring it to forefront of what we're thinking about, we'll find out more and more and learn more and share with the folks our findings on these things because there's got to be a heck of a lot more depth that we can go into on John Day specifically.
I could read bear. I could read some of the stories from the bear stories from Joaquin Miller's book.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying in the future.
Right.
You
Yeah,
don't have
I ain't
to
going to
do it
today.
today.
No.
But one of these days I will have more time to commit to more research and scholarly activity in regard to this.
Well,
Podcast.
Run down our new equipment we got, Robert.
Well, it's not too big of a deal, but we got a Focusrite Scarlett 8-channel interface for the computer, which is pretty awesome. And we have 2 more microphones on the way in the U.S. mail, so we will be able to have guests very soon. And we don't
Yeah.
know when that will be, but we want to bring in some folks and talk about history and their personal feelings about Mitchell and what their experiences has been. And we're going to start having guests and explore that option. And there's a lot of stuff that I want to do, we want to do. It's just going to take more time to get it out there, but we're enjoying doing this. And we're 11. This is our 11th episode, which is pretty nice. Once a week, come in and talk about history and stuff, and share it with all you folks. And if you want to give us any feedback, you can send it to the Mitchell Sentinel podcast in care of Cannon's Tire Center, P.O. Box 7, Mitchell, Oregon 97750. We're going to go the snail mail route for now, just to see who the truly committed are. If they want to ask us.
Yeah.
And we'll respond on air. You don't have to wait for a letter
I was
unless
just
you want
thinking,
something special.
we're going to have to really probably do some disclaimers and everything on some of these guests to get them in here, because some of them may not want to be put under the grill with us or something.
I don't think we'll be too rough on them. But
Well,
if
I
we
don't
have
either,
to.
but we promise not to be.
Well, we'll try not to humiliate them too much. Maybe we might have to even disguise their voice if we're talking about any
Yeah.
illicit.
And already,
Events.
if I tell any sensitive stories about them, I'm sorry.
No, apologize in advance, huh?
I got to tell you one about my mother-in-law today. She soon will be 91 years old.
In November, right?
Yeah. So I'm getting ready today, and for the podcast and everything, I'm doing a lot of research because was busy and I didn't. I prognosticated until
Procrastinated.
that whatever. Yeah, that's it. That's the word I'm looking for.
Prognosticated.
I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry if it means something else. But anyhow, I was doing this and I was putting it off. Is what I should have said. Yeah. Okay. So she says, "Aren't you gonna get dressed for church?" I said, "Nah, I don't think I'm gonna go to church. I'm too busy today." Well, they need you down there. You need to go to church. This is the one thing that really helps you out. You get down there, you get ready for church. So, man, I went in, I got all cleaned up and put on my clean clothes and got ready to go and everything. I come out and got my Bible and got ready to go to church. I said, well, Grandma, aren't you going to church? She said, no, I don't feel like it. She got me again. Here I'm being outsmarted by a 90-year-old woman that's supposed to have dementia.
Yeah, I don't think. I think she's one or two steps ahead of us all.
I think she pulls a dementia card only when it's in her favor.
Well, anyways, that about does it for this week, and hope you're all doing fine out there. Stay safe, stay COVID free, and all that good stuff.
Yep. May the good Lord take a liking to you.